Penn State football is starting to get healthy again at the right time.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch. Every single day we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'd really appreciate it if you left a like on this episode. More importantly, be a part of the discussion down in the comments section as we're hitting on a lot of things in today's episode. Key injured players for Penn State return to practice. Tyseer Denmark, could we see a potential breakout in the final part of the season? And TV networks, TV executives have effectively ruined the whiteout. We'll start out with those injured players. And I think it's important most to highlight Dani Dennis-Sutton and Anthony Donkoh before we get to some of the ones that have been absent for quite some time. Dani Dennis-Sutton and Anthony Donkoh were both at practice, but Dani Dennis-Sutton had missed Wednesday. Slater was at least not seen in that open part for media availability on Wednesday leading up to Ohio State, but that is massive. And then James Franklin added context to it as well, saying that, well, he didn't feel that great Sunday, Monday after the Wisconsin game, but then after the Ohio State game, he felt much better. Dani Dennis-Sutton is a key contributor. He, at one point in time, was leading the country in tackles for loss, even though the sacks haven't exactly piled up for him. He is still getting pressure. He is still active in the backfield. Penn State needs him as close to 100% as possible. I will say this, so it is a groin injury. We know that for a fact. That was confirmed by the reporting in the middle of the Penn State versus Wisconsin game, but it is a groin injury that he is dealing with. And from what I've been told, that's pretty similar to a hamstring injury. You need time to fully heal it. You can manage it, you can play through it, but it is going to take some time to get back to that 110% feeling. So I'm not trying to say that Dani Dennis-Sutton isn't going to be himself or that he's not going to be a playmaker or anything, but just know that what he's dealing with, he's not going to maybe necessarily be 110% the rest of the way, but I think he'll be pretty close with the way that Dani Dennis-Sutton is. He works his tail off to be... Seriously, I don't know that he even should have played in that Ohio State game, and he still was able to play on key passing downs. Dani Dennis-Sutton is a workaholic. Anthony Donkoh, at the starting right tackle, he's been dealing with bumps and bruises throughout the season. He was banged up in that UCLA game, and then they needed him against USC. They needed him they needed him against Wisconsin as well, and they really needed him against Ohio State. I did not expect him to play all that much against Ohio State, but he ended up playing, I think, 38 snaps there, not percent. He actually played about 38 snaps in total in that game. And Nolan Rucci started. They started with Nolan Rucci and said, okay, how are you going to do? Well, Nolan Rucci did not play that well in that game. Anthony Donkoh, out of all the available offensive linemen, had the best overall performance in that game against Ohio State. Now, pass blocking, they were okay. They were decent collectively. But in the run blocking, when it came to run blocking Ohio State, there was not an above average performer according to the analytics. The only one was a not 100% Anthony Donkoh. So that is proving the point that Donkoh is that good of a player, is progressing well, is developing well. And anything that I've said here on this show about up-and-coming Penn State football players, he's a redshirt freshman. So better days of football are still ahead for him. So if he's doing this right now, dealing with some injury adversity, Donkoh's only going to get better. He was the starter right out of the gate, was able to fend off Nolan Rucci. Rucci has provided really good depth for Penn State, but Donkoh is a key player. Is a key player in the is a key cog in the Penn State offense going forward for the remainder of the season and a hypothetical college football playoff appearance. Do not underestimate his value on the offensive line. Now let's talk about three players that have been missing for some time. And I want to start with Keon Wylie as we get to this group of players. Keon Wylie is so valuable for this Penn State defense. Now, we'll see how quickly he returns, but he was at practice for the first time that we've seen all season. And Wylie is not only important because of you need linebacker depth. Penn State's linebacker depth is one of the weakest across all of the depth charts for their position groups. But for Keon Wylie to come back like this, he was supposed to be a breakout player. The reason Abdul Carter moved to defensive end was because Keon Wylie gave them that flexibility to do that. He had a nice Rose Bowl performance. I know that feels like ages ago, but that's where Keon Wylie really started to find his groove and then was able to capitalize on it. And then the injury hit him in spring football. But now he's back. He's trending in the right direction. And this was something that we had alluded to on the show here. We talked about the availability of Wylie, that it was going to be sooner rather than later. And look at that. I think I said that last week too. I said, hey, Keon Wylie should be back relatively soon. We don't know exactly when, but expect him to be back before the end of the regular season. And here he is with 4 games to go. Wylie helps out the depth, but also because he can be a playmaker. I don't know that he's going to be a superstar right now at this point in time, but if he gets close to 100%, he gets back to game speed, Keon Wylie can be a presence on special teams. Special teams would help, but also as a rotational piece in the linebacker room. You don't have to solely just rely on Tony Rojas and Kobe King and Dom DeLuca and Tyler Elsdon. Now you have Tamir Robinson to go along with Keon Wylie. And frankly, if Keon Wylie was at 110%, let's take away the injury from him, I think he'd be that third linebacker in the rotation. That's my honest opinion over a Tyler Elsdon and a Dom DeLuca. I thought Wylie was progressing that well. Now, how about a key returner at wide receiver? Kaden Saunders was back at practice for, I think, the first time in a month, maybe 6 weeks. It feels like close in that 4 to 6 week range. Saw him in a boot the last time after one of the more recent home games. I think it was UCLA. But Kaden Saunders, I mean, any and all help is good for the wide receiver core. This wide receiver core has been good, but it is still not great. It is still not elite. And I think there was a reality check for that group against Ohio State. It's a good second. That's an elite secondary, frankly, for Ohio State. And you notice the difference in talent. Penn State's wide receivers are better, and that's why we're going to talk about Tyseer Denmark in the second segment all around, because Denmark's presence is going to be key down the stretch. But getting Kaden Saunders back gives you some depth at the slot wide receiver position. I will be transparent. I don't think Kaden Saunders, at least in that 10 to 15 minute viewing window, had his best practice. He's definitely getting into the groove of things again. Definitely has to find his footing. When I watch someone like a Julian Fleming that's just kind of quick in and out of his cuts, I don't know the extent of the injury, but when you have a boot on your foot, it's going to be, a foot or an ankle, right, injury. It doesn't take a scientist to figure that one out. But for Kaden Saunders, there's definitely a lack of speed, and that's his best overall trait, is his quickness, is his shiftiness. He is great at the line of scrimmage, and he can be, if he returns to full form, he can be one of those weapons down the stretch. You rotate him in with Liam Clifford off the line of scrimmage. That's a quick, hey, defense is blitzing. Kaden Saunders is open after 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. Drew Allard can find him right away and then let him pick up 10 to 15 yards. I don't want there to be this misconception that Kaden Saunders is this speedster. That's Amari Evans. Kaden Saunders is better off of the line of scrimmage. He's quick and better for slants and drag rounds. I'm not saying that he can't catch a deep pass. That's not my point. But don't think that, he's KJ Hamler if he's at his best. That's not it. Kaden Saunders is that true slot receiver that can get open in tight spaces. And then the last player that we'll talk about, because I think he's important down the stretch and kind of goes along with Tyseer Denmark as a true freshman, Quinton Martin. Running back Quinton Martin, all the potential in the world, and I think we'll couple him with Denmark in the second segment as well because of the red shirt debate and everything here. Martin is running back number 3. He would have been RB4 behind. Losing Cam Wallace for an extended amount of time, definitely a long-term injury. Wouldn't anticipate him back for the season. But Martin just kind of casually disappeared. We didn't really get an update as far as what he was dealing with. And he was back and looked like he was practicing without limitations. This is good because it allows Penn State offensively to it gives them some more insurance. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Singleton not being 100%, and it looks like he's getting progressively better week in and week out, but him suffering the mysterious bumps and bruises, and then Quinton Martin missing. So Penn State's got to be careful with how it handles its running back usage. You have Singleton and you have Allen, but one of the things that you couldn't do, I thought Mike Yurcich was going to run a lot of 2 running back sets a season ago, and he didn't. Why? Because they didn't have the depth behind him. So that's why Quinton Martin is such a key part of all of this a key to this equation. Because then you can get creative. Then you can use Singleton and Allen at the same time rather than or. It just maximizes their availability, and I think Quinton Martin has a lot of talent, and if they intend to preserve his red shirt, so I don't know how many more games we will see out of him, but he is an important piece to the running back room for not only right now, but a potential playoff run. So let's talk about that. Tyseer Denmark and Quinton Martin are X factors in a Penn State playoff run. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. And in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you are not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not necessarily have the time to devote to hiring. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier and more intuitive, and it's why 2.5 million, yes, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And today's show is also brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Hey, football fans, if you didn't know already, fall is here, and that means one thing: college football is in full swing, and it's better than ever. And to make sure you're ready, we've partnered with Home Field, the exclusive apparel sponsor of our show, to bring you their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. Home Field is the go-to for premium collegiate apparel. This shirt right here is a Home Field shirt. It's crafted with comfort in mind, featuring vintage designs that will make you the envy of any tailgate. And with over 180 schools to choose from, including Penn State, there's something for every fan. But the real MVP is the Home Field Platinum Football Box. This is your all-access pass to exclusive gear for the 2024 season with 3 never-before-seen items from your school. Plus, VIPs get even more. You'll get a special hat and a 2024 Platinum Pass for early access and discounts all season long. So don't wait. Head to homefieldapparel.com. That's homefieldapparel.com and gear up today. Plus, Locked On Nittany Lion listeners and viewers get this special promo code WEARE24. That is WEARE24 for 15% off at checkout. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com with code WEARE24. Let's make this season unforgettable. Every time I go to practice week in and week out, and I get to see Tyseer Denmark at the wide receiver drills or the pass catching drills with the quarterbacks, I am just continually impressed. Like my impressions of him and my confidence in him as a capable playmaker, not only now, but definitely for the future, just continue to move up the scale every single time here. Tyseer Denmark can be a difference maker in this offense, but logistically, Penn State is being strategic with how they handle his red shirt. So he's played 1 game at this point. The red shirt rule is you can play up to 4 games, and then it's that 5th game that burns your red shirt. Well, they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because eventually you are going to lose Julian Fleming and Liam Clifford and Trey Wallace. And if you can maximize your availability for Tyseer Denmark, do it. It's the same thing with Quinton Martin here. You have the running backs in Singleton and Allen. Why burn a red shirt just because? Don't do it. If you don't have to, don't do it. So Tyseer Denmark, so I asked James Franklin, I wanted to know, like, okay, we haven't seen Tyseer Denmark for a while. He impressed against Kent State. I know it's Kent State, but he's just able to create separation. He's a real crisp route runner for somebody that is only a true freshman. And I just wanted to know, like, where is he? Is he just not developing? What's going on here? Just how close is he to being in the rotation? And Franklin admitted, like, hey, We are trying to make sure that we can preserve his red shirt and be strategic in that category, but did offer a vote of confidence that we will see Denmark sooner rather than later towards the end of the season. Okay, so they got to get through this game against Washington. They said, and Franklin said that Denmark would have played had there been a lot of injuries, but fortunately for Penn State, the wide receiver depth chart, aside from Kaden Saunders, has been intact. But Denmark, I do believe that he is at the same caliber right now as some of these other Penn State wide receivers. Trey Wallace, Julian Fleming set the standard right now in terms of just overall talent, work ethic, ability, and that's not to disregard Liam Clifford and Kaden Saunders, for example, or Amari Evans. But to say that Tyseer Denmark is far off from this group, that first group of 5, because when I see it at practice, which is why I was curious, Franklin, why isn't he playing? Because he looks like he is at game speed with these veteran wide receivers. Why isn't he playing? Simply put, it's the red shirt. So they are going to unleash Tyseer Denmark down the stretch, and I think he will be a reliable option. I still believe, I've said this from the preseason to the middle of the season to now, that Tyseer Denmark will be a key option moving forward, but we got to wait for them to move past that red shirt point. And then in the playoff, this is why it's important. If Denmark can get some more of that in-game experience without burning his red shirt, so that's why Purdue and Maryland and maybe Minnesota. Minnesota is going to be a tougher matchup, so we'll see. But those games against Purdue and Maryland, we might see some really promising performances from Denmark. It's a different situation with Quinton Martin because Quinton Martin has appeared in multiple games now, so they really have to be careful with his red shirt. And they could also use Corey Smith if they really needed to. But in the playoff, games don't count against redshirt eligibility. That's off the table. So if Penn State ends up making the playoff, which I think they do, they go 11-1, they host a college football playoff game. Right now, the way the stars align, they're hosting Notre Dame in the first round. Awesome matchup. But to have Tyseer Denmark and Quinton Martin, not just as depth chart pieces, but guys that can actually make plays, that's going to be important for the offense as well. It's just a matter of getting them experience. Quinton Martin so far has more so, but Denmark, especially with, you need all the help that you can get at wide receiver, especially against that tougher competition. And Denmark looks the part as a true freshman. But when the redshirt concerns are gone, when you don't have to play chess with his eligibility, they will get Denmark integrated into this offense, and he will definitely be a key pass-catching option down the stretch of the season. I can guarantee you that. And James Franklin had said it. He alluded to it too. Now, still to come, somewhat of a mini rant. The whiteout game doesn't feel like the whiteout games of the past. And anybody that is to blame are TV executives. We'll discuss that after a word from our sponsors. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. And let's hear from another one of our sponsors on today's show, and that is FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet just $5. That's all it takes, $5, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join. And we'll look at the lines for Penn State versus Washington one final time as we get ready for the whiteout game here. Penn State is a 13.5-point favorite against the Huskies, minus 610 on the money line. If you're betting Washington, it's plus 440. The total is still set at 45.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them now at FanDuel.com. Again, that is FanDuel.com, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Make sure you thank a TV executive, because Fox, CBS, and NBC, the TV contract has effectively diminished, effectively ruined the whiteout game for Penn State. There is no care about what opponent or when the game is. It's not a protected annual tradition. The TV networks care about ratings and just kind of listening to some other talk shows, and particularly on Fox, because they have more intel about this whole situation. But I thought it was interesting because LeVar Arrington hosts a show and Brady Quinn's his co-host, and Quinn talked about how the Fox had actually passed on the whiteout game. Okay, thank you. So you don't put it at noon. But it comes to show that the whiteout game isn't taken seriously. And when the networks don't take it seriously, the audiences and the college football world aren't going to take it seriously anymore either. And that's where we are. Ticket prices progressively continue to get lower. Penn State made it Washington. I mean, it's a fun matchup. It's an interesting matchup because it is a former Pac-12 school. But let's be honest, Washington is not the same caliber team when they were the national champion runner-up. This is a completely different team. They're 5-4. This matchup, everybody wanted Penn State and Ohio State to be the whiteout game. But since Fox is so adamant of, we have the noon kickoff slot and we don't want to compete with anybody else, and the ratings just came out again, how they're averaging over 9.5 or somewhere around there, 9.5 million viewers for these Penn State, Ohio State big noon kickoff games. And it's great. So it just justifies that they're going to continue to do it. And they're going to continue to slight the whiteout game. Fine. You don't take it seriously, but Penn State and college football appreciators, people who appreciate college football, do. And now it's losing its prestige. Now it's losing its importance because Penn State has to scramble and say, okay, well, let's devote whiteout energy to Illinois because we don't even know what the kickoff time is going to be for Washington. It was supposed to be 3:30. It was supposed to be on CBS. Now it's on Peacock. It is streaming exclusively on Peacock. The whiteout has gone from the best available opponent on Penn State's schedule at 7:30 at night, guaranteed in the middle of the season, a true primetime matchup with college football playoff implications. No more. And that is because Fox is trying to play chess with the TV ratings. They're trying to strategically separate themselves because there was no other game in that first window for college football. What other game was anybody watching outside of Penn State, Ohio State? Seriously, were you watching Tulane? And maybe they weren't playing at noon, and I don't mean to pick on Tulane. But were you watching Memphis over Penn State versus Ohio State? No. If you like college football, you were most likely watching that game. And Fox knows that. Fox understands that. But CBS and NBC, they're a part of this too. They don't make an effort to try and get that game in their TV draft. That's how it works. It's like a fantasy football draft, but for college football games in the Big Ten amongst these three networks. And then not only that, NBC has the game, and then they have the audacity to make it exclusively only on Peacock. Forget that it's Penn State versus Washington. It's the whiteout game too. And it's exclusively on Peacock. It's streaming. It's not even on a major network. So if NBC had put this in prime time, that's one thing, but that's just salt in the wound at this point. And the whiteout is no longer as significant. I'd even argue it's ruined. Again, Penn State last second whiteout energy against Illinois. That's great and all, but it doesn't even feel like it's the whiteout game this weekend against Washington. It doesn't have the feel of it. There's no buildup. Penn State kind of has to jump from opponent. First, it was rumored it was UCLA. Then Illinois had consideration. And Washington, why is this even a discussion? Why is this even a debate? it should be Penn State, Ohio State, or next season, Penn State versus Oregon. But I guarantee you that Fox is going to go after that Penn State-Oregon game and make it a noon kickoff. I sit here today, and even a year before that's even going to be on the schedule. It is on the schedule, but a year before they actually decide what the schedule is going to look like, Fox is going to try everything in its power to make sure. So CBS and NBC, they're complicit in this because they need to step up, particularly NBC, because they have the primetime slot. They can trade, they can move around, they can actually switch from what I've gathered. NBC could switch with CBS and rotate from 3:30 or 4 to 8 p.m., 7:30, 8 p.m. But since NBC is the nightcap and will always have the primetime slot first, why don't you look at that game and know that you are going to get a guaranteed whiteout if you take Penn State's best opponent on that future schedule? Fox is to blame first, but CBS and NBC aren't doing any favors. Thank you, Ray. I seriously, you say they're just chasing after ratings. I don't know how the whiteout, a Penn State versus Ohio State whiteout game in prime time would not still generate ratings for you. Are you that scared of competition? Maybe. I'm not a TV exec, so maybe I'm off base here. But that's my rant about this. The whiteout, it feels like it's unimportant. It doesn't matter. And you can thank the TV executives. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section about the whiteout dilemma, the key returning players for Penn State, and the emergence potentially of Tyseer Denmark and Quinton Martin. Please leave a like on this episode. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On Big Ten with host Craig Sheeman. Everything that's Big Ten related, football, now men's basketball is starting to ramp up. Everything from Penn State to, Michigan and Ohio State, and all the newcomers from the former Pac-12 conference. There is not a part of the Big Ten that Craig Sheeman does not cover, and that's why it is called Locked On Big Ten. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.